Today's guest is a songwriter and educator. She teaches songwriting for Berklee Online and helps artists write the songs they've always dreamed of. We're going to learn practical tips and philosophy to help our songwriting. Please welcome Andrea Stolpe to the Music Production Podcast. Do you ever have trouble coming up with ideas for your music? Or how about making progress on your songs and finishing them? Making music is a lot of fun, but finishing music is hard work. And in the hundreds of guests I've had on the Music Production Podcast, no one has ever said making music is easy. And it's even harder when you're on your own. And that's why I have the Music Production Club. The Music Production Club is a membership service that gets you access to all of my latest creations, from Ableton Live packs and samples to courses and books. And as soon as you join, you get access to a huge collection of tools you'll actually want to use to help you make your own unique and original music. We have a community of like-minded producers you can share your music with and learn from. We have an active Discord community and live meetings over Zoom where we spend time making music around some prompt or challenge, and then we share our results with each other, getting instant feedback. Now we have the monthly music mission, a challenge to create a new track every month. And each month I'll provide you with tools, sounds, prompts, and assignments that will help you make more music. And along the way, we are supporting each other and helping each other get our song across the finish line. Music producers produce music. Finishing one song per month is a worthy goal. It's enough time to work on a song in detail without getting overwhelmed by perfectionism. Imagine this. If you can make one song per month, in a year, you'll have a full album's worth of music. And a new album per year is pretty impressive for any artist. So why not give it a try and wake up the music sleeping inside of you? It's just $6 per month and even less if you join for longer. You can cancel at any time and you get to keep everything. That's the Music Production Club. It's my personal pride and joy. I hope you'll consider becoming a member and join us on our mission to make more and better music. Check it out at brianfunk.com/MPC. Okay, Andrea, welcome to the Music Production Podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure because I've learned a lot from you. I follow you on Instagram. We're both Berklee Online teachers, so I get students once in a while that have had you, and you're putting out great material, valuable songwriting advice, and even some more like philosophical stuff just about kind of the mental stuff we all go through with music making. So it's great to get a chance to sit down, figure out what it's all about with you.
Well, thank you so much. I hope I have something useful to say.
I'm sure you do. I've seen it before.
Okay,
so.
All right. We'll just repeat the pattern.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so you do so much great work teaching Berklee Online, but your Instagram is a really great source for, songwriting, just ideas, getting started.
Yeah.
I was wondering, though, if you can kind of take us through maybe some of the stuff that got you here, like especially your time in Nashville. Sounds like a really formative part of your life.
Yeah. Well, so I call Nashville the master's degree of the Berklee program, right? When you go through the songwriting curriculum at Berklee, you hopefully have teachers like Jimmy Kachulis in melody writing and Pat Pattison in lyric writing. And from that, you get this toolkit, which, it's like if you're an instrumentalist, you kind of have an idea of, well, there's a gap between where I am right now and where, the players I aspire to be like are. And it's that application of the tools until they become intuitive. And so that's where Nashville felt like that constant study with now no direction on, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Because no collaborator there is going to be able to tell you what the tools are. They don't know, really. They just do what they do, so they think, right? But all along the way of writing so many songs and emulating others who use popular song structure, or even feeling intuitively the difference between a lyric that's visceral and interesting versus one that's, just a thought or a feeling or a statement that's not all that uncommon in songs. Yeah, you start to recognize, I know stuff. A few years later, you're like, wow, I feel more opinionated, more strongly about what I want to write, what I don't want to write, and what sounds like everything else I've written. And the thing about Nashville, there's such a concentration of writers that it's impossible not to run into someone who really humbles you. And I think that's part of the
Mm.
value of being at a school like Berkeley. You know, you walk in the door and you're like, "Oh crap, that's improv. I had no idea." You know, or
Hmm.
"Oh, okay, I thought I was, comping all right." But it's like Nashville that is that way with songwriting, I think, and it's such good practice to be told, don't write something esoteric or something. I don't want to hear therapy about you. I want to hear a song that fits into a commercial market. Which implies that it has a hook and it has a title on which everything is built. And though um, a country music, it certainly doesn't. I wouldn't categorize it by being particularly harmonically sophisticated, but it's that way lyrically, right? It really sets the bar for clarity of characters and who and when and where and all these things that are hard. It's hard to be specific in songwriting and still be confident that we're being universal. So I think
Mm.
that's the training that Nashville offers. Not that you can't get that other places, absolutely, but you're in a hotbed of other people who will very willingly give you commentary on whether your song is working or not. And it's all
Mm.
measured by this commercial narrow lane that if you can feel what that is and over time develop a sense for what that is and then write to it and match it while staying one step ahead of it because you don't want to write what everybody else just wrote. That's a tough thing. It's really tough. And that I would say would be how I got to where I am, wherever I am. I'm not really sure. But looking back, I think that's what that time was for.
Yeah, I guess it helps you develop a tough skin too, right? To
Oh, man,
constantly be scrutinized like
I'm
that.
such a wimp. I growing up in Minnesota, where not all Minnesotans are like this, but in a very intellectualized, science-based family, we don't share feelings. Are You can have them, just keep them to yourself. So I think the idea of getting that kind of criticism, it's so very vulnerable, and that sinking feeling when someone who knows, let's say a publisher, from whom you feel like you're asking favors, has something to say about your song, but they can't offer you ways to fix it necessarily. It's that feeling of, oh my God, now I have to rewrite the whole song and I'm already neck deep in it. I don't know what to change. I don't know what not to change.
Mm.
Yeah, it's enough to make anyone pack up and move, you know? Yeah.
That's a hard moment too, because you've probably already spent so much time with the song and it's really hard to see it in a different way. It's already sort of become this thing to you, and we already know what we're trying to communicate. So it's hard to know if the other person, the listener, is receiving that.
It's really hard. I think, it's like anything else. It's like listening to a mix for 10 hours, right? Um,
Mm.
you need to take breaks. And I think it's kind of the difficult thing when you haven't written songs, you're not fast until you're fast and you have written songs. And so it's kind of this cycle where I'd like to be faster, but when I'm faster, I can't write fast. And yet speed is what we need to be able to, I think, maintain that initial period of objectivity, or that feeling of where you're just responding to what's coming out. Oh, I liked that. I like what I just did. Or no, I'm not going to bother pushing record because I feel like I'm still getting there. I think those feelings are really valid. And I always say,
Mm.
like, if you can't trust your instinct, then no wonder it takes hours and hours and hours. And we no wonder we hold on to every idea or can't finish songs because there is no guide. There's only externally. I think I should be writing a really great lyric. Well, what is a great lyric? I don't know, but I'll know it when I hear it.
Mm.
That's a really frustrating place to be. And I think that's partly why I do what I do, is because I remember that feeling like it was yesterday. And I'm still there. I still get terrified when I sit down to write something. And I still think I'm never going to find my way through this idea, ever. And then you start to, and you're like, oh, okay, I think I can do this one more time.
It's funny you say that. I think I need to start a tally list, like kind of like a T chart of people that find it easy, people that still struggle with it.
Oh, man.
And I don't think I'd have any checks on the people that find it
Yeah,
easy.
they're liars. They're liars.
Yeah.
Or, they've just gotten really used to doing what they do. I think many of us sit down and we want to originate. We want to discover what else there could be, rather than, there's nothing wrong with just entertaining. That's wonderful. But I think also, there's certainly a stigma that if you've been putting out the same kind of songs, doing the same thing for a long, long time, we do maybe start to wonder. And unless you're iconic, I suppose, and that's just, you're Sinatra, and that's really just what you do, and that's all we want to know. That might be another thing. But yeah, I think that discovery process, that sense of I just want to capture what is unknown, is part of what leads to that beautiful oceanic feeling when you're in the flow. And it's also that frustrating, kind of drives you to your grave, kind of divides all your relationships kind of feeling too. And it's really hard to live that way. So I think that's where a certain amount of tools-based, structured daily writing, I think, is what really resonates with me, because it's how I meet the stuff I don't understand with the stuff I can understand. That was a lot.
Right. To just
in one answer.
Yeah. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah. Reel me in whenever you need to.
No. I always find that these episodes are the best when I look at the waveforms afterwards, and I barely have any movement on it.
Oh,
so the more I listen.
Cool. Wow.
That idea of like just the routine of it, I think is kind of counterintuitive to maybe what people think in the beginning, that you sort of need the inspiration, you need that lightning bolt to strike you.
Yeah.
I'm really a believer that you have to like make the lightning bolt strike and go out and find it and show up and hold the lightning rod at the sky
Right.
over and over again before that really ever happens. It's for me, it's kind of a rare feeling that like, I got an idea.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, I mean, every creative person is going to have this. If you're a producer, if you're an engineer, if you're a writer, a painter, sports players, I imagine it's very, very similar in that, the more you do it, the more moments of lightning that strike. I found that to be true in my own experience, and that's what I hear other people say. And then a common, complaint from us songwriters is that we only have the duration of that lightning strike to then write something and finish it. And, clearly that's terrifying and not realistic way to be, that you have to stop whatever you're doing and, make sure you have something come out that's now structured, in the way that you would musically want it to be. I think that's pretty unrealistic. Sometimes songs come out that way, and I think sometimes I feel like we use them as a see, it can work, it can, or look how talented they are. It just came out all at once in 20 minutes. I think I heard Lady Gaga say that about a song, and Ace of Base wrote like the last tune on the album that became this big hit, that way, where they're just like, we need another song. And so in the studio, they're just mapping it out. I think it can happen, but it's interesting how, those things also tend to happen after people have had lots of experience. So yes, it's going to happen more and more. And if I told anybody, like, you have to write a song in 20 minutes or I'll take your firstborn, they're going to do it. It's not then. So the implication there is, I want to write a song, I want to write more quickly. I would say, no, you want to write something great more quickly. So, what's it going to be? I would also like a really nice house for 400K in LA, but that's just not going to happen.
Hmm.
So, you kind of have to pick your battles here. And I think that's a thing where I like to separate the brainstorming from the editing. Because once we get the material on the page or recorded that we can work with, there's usually a lot more that comes out than we really need. So musically, we're sort of toying with a motif or toying with a riff, or we've got a chord progression that kind of, as we play it, grows. And then, but the point where you have to sit down and say, okay, I think the inspiration has fizzled now. Then we look at what we have, and I think we get disappointed, like, well, it's not done. Now what do I do? And we have to make decisions, and I wouldn't say that songwriters are what come to mind when I think of really decisive people. I think we're kind of like, I don't know. I like all of this, which is another way of saying I don't know how to evaluate what needs to be in this song and what doesn't need to be in this song. Because frankly, when I write, I make it about me. It's all about me, and I think some of that's reflected in the culture, particularly of pop music and country music, commercial music these days. It definitely. I wish we would get back to thinking about what's good for the song rather than what's good for the artist or what's good for, hitting culture right where it, poking it right where it hurts kind of thing. So we can talk more about that, but.
Yeah, I can think about that in terms of the production, the arrangement, and all that kind of stuff, where most of the time, when it's time to put my songs together, it's a matter of taking stuff away.
Yes.
Clearing out the path so like you can see this idea clearly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard to identify, and a lot of times I figure it out by just kind of one by one taking things out until you've got the bare bones, and then really, that's the theme. So let's really emphasize that.
Yeah.
But you mentioned like taking it away from the me and making it more culturally significant. I'd like to know what you mean by that a little bit more.
I hadn't intended on talking about that.
How do you do that?
It's funny. I never know how. I guess the older I get, the more free I feel to be opinionated. I'm just working my way towards being a grumpy old woman. But maybe that'll be my right to get there someday. I think someone of my age, and I'm upper 40s, right? When I try to write, I recognize that I am I've written all the stuff that I hear, barring a little bit different take on culture now than when I was 19. So, but something that really bugs me, if I may, and we can cut this out of this or not, it's it's up to you, is the idea that those low-hanging fruit songs are the ones that ooh, you did me wrong, and I'm not thinking about you at all. I'm so over you. And yet I'm singing this song about you. It's all aggressive, like I'm still angry. It's like, I call it low-hanging fruit because it's such a mimicking art form, and it's easy to grab. It's easy to write with anger as the central sort of piece to look at there. And of course, relationships of any kind are certainly what brings meaning to so many of our songs is how do I relate to another person? How am I relating to the world? How am I relating to an issue? Or how am I relating to what the current situation is, or something from the past, and that would be a me relating to me kind of thing. So there's always that element there, I think, when we write songs, something that's what have I learned? What am I living? What is lost? What is loved? It's the four L's, I call them. But um, but I guess, I wish that songwriting, and I think that there are people out there who are getting us back to songs that stand the test of time, songs that truly make a difference, and make music have real meaning and reflect the meaning that's in our culture as well as bring meaning to culture, are those that aren't just grabbing that low hanging fruit, complaining songs too.
Mm.
It's kind of like, you know what? Nobody cares if you're mad anymore. And that honestly too, that can be an age thing. But also, if I think about it, the industry has historically in the last years been more driven by younger folks than it has in prior times. So, it's just, and so maybe there's an opportunity for people who, well, I'm really digging myself into it this morning, people with age behind them, to
Wisdom.
to really get in there and be like, this isn't all that we can talk about. It's all
Hmm.
there's a, and I don't just mean lyrically, but musically as well. And really think about how is this music purposefully making the message and the words even more meaningful, and the words making the music even more meaningful. Where I think, one of the things that nowadays, of course, with studios being so prevalent at home, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing, but just really, I just encourage people to really test the limits of that and learn about your systems and learn about music, so that it's not just, here's the loop, and oh yeah, this sounds like another pop song, which is going to naturally lead me to think that the only things I can write about are pop centric, or aggressive, or, baby, I love you, baby, you left me, or, whatever it is. But just those kind of knee jerk reactions to where songwriting can be at in that narrow lane of sort of commercially the loudest stuff that's out there, to a
Mm.
degree. I am ranting. Again, just do what you want with that. But
Well, I think it's good to hear and good to think about too that um, there are like you said, almost like low hanging fruit, like obvious things, obvious places to go that get cliche after a while,
yeah.
and it is nice to get a fresh perspective once in a while. To as a songwriter too, right?
The trouble is, though, I can sit here and say, ah, man, songs today. I wish there was more. And, I'm not the only one who says this. I wish there was more substance. But the
Mm.
truth is that, we would all like to come out of the gate writing highly original stuff. But the truth is, you have to go through the phases and the stages. And it seems that one of those is this dedication to, I'm going to write something that's meaningful to me. And what's meaningful to me at 19 or 16 or 14 or 34 or 92 are kind of different, right? And
Mm.
so at any point, we do have to kind of go through the natural states of, I'm writing this kind of song and it's therapy for me. And oh, yeah, I guess you've heard that before, but I never have, because I'm the age I am and I'm doing this for the first time, you know?
Mm.
So, I think at the same time as saying, man, I wish there was more substance out there. I think it's the more experienced writers who bear the responsibility of bringing that substance in and saying, look what's possible to do. Look what you can do. And it's okay to be moving through those phases in, sequential order, however that goes. But it's often when we recognize, oh man, I've been writing for the industry or what I think people want to hear, and I'm not successful, because who is, very, very, very few. It's a tough little crack to get through. or it's not what I hoped it would be. Forget it. I'm just going to write stuff that I want to write. And often that's when people break, quote unquote,
Mm.
whatever that is for them. So I will say, we can sit here and kind of complain about the state of things, or apparently that's where I'm at. And we used to do that a lot in co-writes in Nashville, like, oh man, I can't believe this and that, and they didn't cut that song, and why not, and all this, but um, but in the end, I think there's no better decision than writing things that really make you as the writer feel like you fully expressed yourself, like, and things that I would listen to. I want to write things I would listen to. And I forgot that for a lot
Mm.
of years. Now looking back, I understand that that's not uncommon, where your focus is, what do they want to hear? And, does it sound cool? Is it current? Is it, man, there I am doing that Sheryl Crow thing again. Well, it's okay. It takes a lot of
Mm.
empathy for yourself too to do this, because we're most often not writing anything new, um, and you got to do it anyway. Finish the song anyway.
Right. Well, I want to let you know I appreciate your honesty about this because it's so common. I mean, I've have band practice, and there's almost always a point during practice where we're complaining about the state of music or why is this the popular thing,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and we all feel that a lot, I think, as people that make music. Um,
yeah,
the idea of like making the stuff that you want to make has helped, and the way I kind of look at it is almost like it's well, like a journal entry almost, I guess. Like, this is where I'm at today. And today I wrote a silly song about like nonsense, and it's cool.
yeah,
Like, you're allowed to do that sometimes. And then there are other days when you're dwelling in some darkness that maybe tomorrow you look at and you're like, that was a passing feeling I had, but it doesn't necessarily characterize me how I am all the time.
yeah,
So you can kind of like allow these like moments
definitely.
to pass, just the way feelings are. They come and go, and sometimes they're very ridiculous, and sometimes they're very dramatic, and sometimes they're underplayed even.
Yeah.
And
Well said.
the songs can kind of do that too. But I think also when we decide to record our songs or perform our songs, then we start thinking, what do other people think? How is this going to come off to others? And
Yeah.
sometimes when I start thinking that way, if I'm being clever enough, if I'm using intelligent chords and clever rhymes and all that, that's when I start getting stuck
Yes.
and I start questioning everything.
Yes. Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I think, and that's where we start to talk about tools. What can we do
Mm.
to address each of those things individually instead of the song as a whole? Because you talk about the
Mm.
song as a whole, if you let that picture get too big, and then it becomes a personal thing. It's a personal offense that, wow, this song isn't quite what I hoped it would be. All right. So I can dive into tools or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I love that you do, which I think might be surprising to people, understanding like your experience and all you've
Mm,
done and all you know about this, is you're often advocating for pretty simple concepts. Um, where it's I was just watching one of your clips on Instagram. It was like,
mm.
Do 3 chords today. That's it.
Yeah.
Just 3 chords."
Yeah.
Or like, "Today your exercise is to hold back the tonic chord until the chorus."
Right.
It's nothing too crazy, and
Yeah.
like, I think anyone at any level can jump in on that.
Yeah. That is absolutely correct. So, not to get lost in the weeds, because the more elements that are going on at the same time, the more diverse the emotion can be, or the more, I would say, the more you have to intuit the character. So, in a traditional country song, um, you know, we could take 3 chords. The one chord, the four major chord, the five major chord. If you're in the key of G, it's G major, C major, D major. And you can write a wonderful song using those chords. Now, as I mentioned, I wouldn't say that country music epitomizes sophistication when it comes to harmony. And it makes sense to me because when I think about the characters that I know and love from traditional country music, they're grounded. They are perhaps their intention is not to be overly poetic. They're, I want to say, simple and structured in the sense that um, there's not a lot of chaos maybe going on the inside. It's they show you their colors, and there's kind of clarity there, and there's that character is being expressed first and foremost in the music. There's maybe a rough around the edges kind of a sense. I mean, I think Chris Christopherson, it's acoustic. There's a rawness. There's Johnny Cash, Springsteen, and I think whether that expression musically comes out of who we know ourselves to be or who we naturally are, which is also defined by the limits of our skill set, I think it doesn't matter. And I think that so many of us are like, who am I as an artist? What's my sound? And I'm like, well, who do you want to be? And I think a lot of times who we want to be can be pushing us into a direction that doesn't naturally express best who we really are. Or we get it confused with, or we're just kind of limited by our lack of skill. I would love to be a jazz singer. I don't have the natural pipes for that. I haven't trained myself on my instrument for that. So could I bring something interesting to jazz with the skill set I have? Possibly, but it's going to be a collision that I would not be able to tell you what happened until I get in there with the other people and collaborate. And we're like, whoa, that was kind of cool. Or I feel nothing. The reality is I'm going to sing all the notes. I'm going to say the words and I'm going to play some of the chords that the band would play. But it's not about that, right? It's that kind of other dimension that none of us can really say, I've got the key to and I can use it anytime I want. It's the moment that happens that's kind of unpredictable. And so I think that's why I say to keep it simple, because when I have just a few chords to mess around with, if I'm going R&B or soul, those three chords might probably be different than the three chords that I choose if I'm going traditional country. But that's even an interesting thing to say, like, well, how do you know that? Well, maybe if I'm trying to really epitomize the character in that style of writing, those chords might have some nuance to them that would suggest urban or a little bit of rub or dissonance or reflection, thoughtfulness, and youthfulness. Whereas the other character might be more root position, just clean cut root third, fifth. I'm not going to overcomplicate that character. So that's the trouble and the deliverance, I think, of genre, is that they make most potent the artist. And so like, oh, you're country. And then we kind of generate a expectation of lyrically and musically what that character is all about. But none of us, especially anymore, really fit clean cut into a single genre necessarily. Maybe when we start out, because we're just emulating what, and we don't know, oh, I'm playing, a strumming pattern on guitar that's going to indicate some, style that I'm doing along with the chords. So, and we choose those things a lot of times without really being aware that we've made those choices, but we're free to make those choices. So that's where I like to say, play one string and just play the bass line, one string. Um, and now you've really left yourself open, which means that you're not communicating to your listener what you are without knowing that you've just communicated that, if that makes any sense.
Gotcha. You're stripping away all of the kind of indicators
Yeah.
of the genre and the style, and just letting the kind of bare bones thought and expression come out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's
Mm.
going to work for some music, of course, and not as well for others. If you're writing something that relies on a production, stripping away might leave you to think, man, there's like nothing here, or this is a really
Mhm.
cliche lyric, or whatever other kind of judgments that we make. But I think by stripping away, you recognize all the pieces that you're trying to play with, and what is sort of the chords themselves we confuse with the strumming pattern, the rhythm, and shall I say groove, maybe, that we express those with. But those are two separate things, And I think
Mm.
as a beginning songwriter, I mean, even at any point in time, I'm thoughtful about, well, um, there are four things that I'm always able to control, and it's melody, the words, the rhythm, which really means, what's the rhythm on piano or on guitar that I'm playing these chords with, and the last thing is the chords. And from those four things, everything, stems, and it becomes very complicated very quickly, you know. Um, so it can be helpful, I think, when writing simply, start with just a few chords, because that when you do move, make it an intentional choice to bring a new color in, or be aware of how does it sound when I move to the 3 minor chord. Is that now, what does it do for the words on top? Does it suggest now that there's a little bit of a problem, or a shadow, or a rub, or you're thoughtful about something? And how is that different than had you moved to the 4 major chord, where it was uplifting or encouraging, or and it's not that the 3 minor always does this or the 4 major always does that. It's in context of what you're making. It's like an organic, alive being that you're slowly recognizing who it is at any moment, and it's going to act differently as time goes on through the song. That makes sense?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
was in
And
my coffee? I don't know. That was a bit out there, but
well, you hear a lot of songwriters talk about like the true test of a song as if it survives on an acoustic guitar or at the piano
hmm,
without all of the dressing around it.
yeah,
And there's, I know I do it myself where I might have like a mediocre idea and I try to, you know, dress it up,
yeah,
put all kinds of production
oh,
over it.
yeah,
And sometimes that can be interesting.
yeah,
Um, I mean, there are definitely genres of music that are very production focused.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, but I do think maybe the best place to be is sort of in both if you can. But that's a hard thing to do at once. All at like when you're trying to think that way with you can't play all those things at once and you can't make that all happen at the same time.
Yeah,
So you
and we do
need to
we do reference artists and songwriters who seem to be able to do everything, and do it really well, right? And think that
mhm,
that's our job. When in
right.
actuality, there's collaboration is how most people make anything. Yeah,
Mhm.
these days for sure.
Yeah. Well, really probably throughout time. I mean, the idea of being like a solo person with your computer in your bedroom is pretty new, but a lot of people do that now.
Yeah,
Used to be the only way you could hear music together was with people
yeah,
up until, recording happened.
for
It's a
sure.
it's a funny flip we have.
Yeah, it is, and I got to think it's exactly what needs to happen, and we'll come out of it knowing something we didn't before. I don't know what it is yet, but
Mm.
yeah.
Well, I've kind of been picking up on a bit of a movement to have maybe like less polished stuff get through musically. It's a whole like lo-fi hip hop thing
Yeah.
that's been really popular. But even just not like for a little while there, everything was just slick as could be.
Yeah.
And then, stuff, even like when Billie Eilish came out, that was shocking because it wasn't that. And it was allowed to get so sparse at times.
Yeah.
And and I think part of the benefit of that was like people really were able to connect with her because she wasn't hiding behind everything, or she wasn't maybe hidden behind all the production.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think maybe a lot of the complexity that we want to hear in our music is really just a couple tweaks to simple ideas.
Sure.
Um,
Agreed.
Sometimes when I'm listening to like the Beatles, say, it might sound either complicated or simple depending on the song, but when you look at it, it's just a couple little things here and there. And maybe because it's not too much, you get to appreciate it more.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the songwriter can decide, any one of us can decide when, what to do at any time and what we like. And when I'm working with songwriters, it's not about what I like. And so whether they like something that's more full or, um, than I do, it really doesn't matter. It's provoking an awareness, I think, or developing an awareness for why did you do what you do? Why do you think that it's important for you to have both of those guitar lines in here instead of just one, you know? And
Mm,
sometimes it's not something we can put into words. And a lot of times we need distance from any project that we're doing or song we're making to be able to grow a little more and then look back and listen to it and recognize, oh, I'm now hearing this a little bit more like the average listener is hearing this because I kind of forgot about having worked on it. Um, and so, I think it's just about at any point we have to, if we're in education, I think the job is to meet people where they're at and don't, I try not to assume I know the questions that the songwriter is having because they might not be having the same questions that I'm having. And it doesn't do any good for me to say there's a problem with your song and for them to say I don't hear it. There's no
mm,
teachable moment there. And so I find that the best and most high growth moments are when the songwriter can say, I'm not happy with this song and I don't know why, or I don't think it's done. And then I can say, where do you start to feel that there's something off, where it goes off the rails? And just asking that question, then they start to have ideas about where it's going wrong. Um, Sometimes they'll come in and say, I know exactly, I don't like my bridge. But sometimes the problem isn't the bridge. Sometimes the problem is that the song is already too long, or the song has already had too many parts. And so to have a bridge come in and say, look how different I am, and look how I'm transforming the message to take you to the last chorus. And the bridge didn't even stand a chance because there were
mm.
two verses and a pre chorus and a chorus. And by that time, it was a minute and a half in and 1,000 ideas delivered. Um, and so we don't always know how to fix what is off. But I think that what I find is that songwriters, and I would say this is true for all of us musicians, when we're really listening to our instinct, to our intuition, we can say something's not right. I just don't know. I haven't asked myself yet where it goes wrong. And then second, even if I did know, how would I fix it? And that is a terrifying thought. And people who don't write have a difficult time providing writers with tools they can actually use and use in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable amount of effort to actually here's version A and here's version B, and there's actually version B is better than A, you know. Um, so anyway, that's where I think we talked about the vulnerability of writing and playing our songs for other people. And I think it's wonderful to play our songs for people, um, for the purpose of our own being able to feel how it feels in the room when someone's listening, and we get that little tinge of, "Ah, I don't like that chord there. Ah, no." It's this feeling
Yeah.
of, yeah, that's not my best work. And then usually, the people listening have something to say about it, and everybody's going to have something to say about your song if you give them the space to say it. But it's not often useful because, again, it's more about the writer and where the writer's at and the questions the writer has and keying into the instinct, rather than taking other people's ideas and trying to wear them as your own.
A lot of the feedback is often pretty abstract too, so
Yeah.
it's hard to make sense of it. But there is a feeling, and it's always funny anytime I play anything for anybody. It sounds different
It
when they
does.
are there.
It does.
It's like a new mix or something, you know?
That's right.
And sometimes I like it more. Sometimes I'm like, "Oh, man, I was off on this."
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I hear you.
and part of that is even timing, like, one thing I like to think about a lot is, like, what the song is for. When is the song for? Like, "Oh, this is a great song for, like, we're going out to the party. This is perfect.
Yeah.
This is a nice song for like winding down after the party. This is one for sitting on the beach." And if you play the like going out for the party song when we're trying to go to bed,
Yeah.
it doesn't work
Yeah.
in that situation.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a timing thing.
For sure. For sure. You got to be in the right mood. Yep.
Yeah. Something mentioned earlier, kind of in the beginning, you were talking about like being specific and universal at the same time. And this is one of the things I enjoy a lot about country music. It's not really my genre to listen to, but I love how specific they can get down to like, the type of truck on the specific road, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have been there
Yeah.
to get it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen does this really well too.
Definitely.
And I'm very interested in this sort of like selective detail, like
Yeah.
when you choose to be that way, and when I teach high school English. I don't think I mentioned that to you.
Oh, wow.
So that's like my grown-up job, and
Yeah.
there are certain books that you read, and it's just like hours and pages of just detail that feels kind of pointless. And
Oh,
for my students, I lose them. So I have to usually skip those sections.
you take me
But then
back
there's
to
others.
Faulkner. Faulkner in like ninth grade. Yes.
Yeah, like
Uh,
other stories, like the details, like pull you in.
yeah.
And you read those lines, and you're like, oh yeah, like yeah, I've never been there, but I get it.
Right.
And in songs, you have so much less space than say like a novel, where you've got tons of room to develop ideas.
Yes.
Songs are more like poems, and I describe them to my students like, your novel is like a mansion. It's an estate. You've got all these rooms, and you can work on ideas and develop them. But like a poem is more like a studio apartment. So every
Mm.
corner is really important. Like what I put on this shelf really matters. In the mansion, it doesn't matter. There's shelves everywhere.
I love that analogy. That's great.
Yeah, it's like you have to be very decisive and very deliberate.
Hmm.
And I'm curious to just know what you think about that. When to drop those really specific details that take up a line or a couple lines in a song, and when maybe to let them go.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Sometimes you describe something really nice, but it just has to go. It's like beautiful language, but it doesn't help.
A lot of songwriters struggle with this. I think we all do because, well, so I attempted to express my thoughts on when to be specific, which we call it putting furniture in a song. So you're describing a thing. It's usually got a tangible noun. It's not freedom, it's the couch in the living room on the shag carpet with the coffee table and the lamp, you know. So you're putting stuff in the room, like you were talking about. And then there's other language that tells what meaning that stuff has. So this is what we're doing when we write lyrics, is we're trying to decide on the weight of the lyric. A heavy lyric would be like Leonard Cohen, some Leonard Cohen, where it's going to be all descriptive. And finally, there's a line that tells me how you feel. This kind of writing, we can kind of associate that with very, it's usually acoustic. It's very lyric driven. So if you take the lyric away, that song would no longer be something that you can remember or differentiate from other songs. So a lot of Americana, folk, like Jason Isbell, you can see how talented and experienced and skilled this lyric writer is. And they're able to generate songs that I think rely sometimes very heavily on the lyric. And then you've got other kinds of music that doesn't rely on that. Some things like Alessia Cara and Zed, like this, or I think of Zed songs like Clarity or Stay. Like the lyric is somewhat nonsense. However, I make meaning of it in whatever mood I'm in. And that meaning can change from day to day. So I don't know if you'd call that nonsense or just highly sophisticated. It's one or the other. I don't know. But that's the kind of stuff.
Often confused.
I know, right? It's everything.
Easily.
Yeah. But it makes sense that lightweight lyric, it doesn't drag down the production, which is very much the centerpiece of those kinds of songs, you know, and the melody, of course. So those are just different skill sets. And when lyrics scare writers, which very reasonable, we should all be intimidated by them. They're just terrifying. But when you get down into it and you're like, all right, what are words? They're just nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And I've got some pronouns in there and some little things, some is, and, but, yet, still, while. Okay, then there's two other big things to think about, just point of view and tense. And that's it. Close the book. The other thing is we all speak the language that we're writing in, hopefully. Or you feel competent enough with it that you're writing in it. So conversational quality is another just kind of final measurement that you can use to feel more comfortable writing lyrics. So then you realize, well, when you're writing a resume and they say, well, start with the verb, make it an action. And so, okay, when you do that in lyrics, the same becomes true. The line kind of livens. So you could say, I'm going to start with a verb. So Lumineers do this, and they're not even country, right? They are, the first line is, pack yourself a toothbrush, dear. That's very sensory. It's not, I don't know what I'm doing here, or, some thought feeling line. It's very sensory and very specific. So we can use specific language, but when, I think, or how much do you use and when do you move between the two becomes the question. I think the general rule of thumb, if you're not used to using specific language, would be get specific early, so right from the top of the song, and then stay specific a little longer than you feel comfortable doing. So this has a lot of results in our songwriting, but some of them may be that you'll find you're describing more of a moment in the first verse when you do this than biting off the whole song idea and delivering it to the listener. But if you think about it, this is how we tell stories, right? If I told you a story about how my husband broke his foot, I just introduced the idea, which is kind of like saying, here's the title. But then if I keep telling you, if I go right into, oh, he was so sad, and it hurt, and yeah, he was pretty upset, and it was tough for all of us. Your next question was probably, well, how did he break it? And that's verse. That's like, well, so he was at Hapkido, and he came down really hard on the right side of his foot with all of his weight from a kick. I could even tell you which kick it was if I wanted to get more specific. And then he heard a snap and he fell. These are all verse material. After I've told you that, I'm not going to tell you that again. I'm not going to say, oh, and then also there were some kids in the corner eating Cheetos. That's irrelevant. So I think that we make lyric writing sometimes harder than it needs to be, where if we just recognize this is a form of communication, and like you said, there's a limited amount of space, which means I'm going to tell you the 30-second story of how my husband broke his foot rather than the 3-minute story. And I'm going to start by showing you where it was, when it happened, and who it happened to, which is very much like songs do, but they don't say, and I'm talking about you and me. It's pack yourself a toothbrush, dear. Okay, so the song is already established. It's you and me. That's what it is. I mean, it could be we, but the pronouns are in there. The specific language. I make so many inferences from pictures in a song, which is the specific language, rather than being told how you feel. I no longer need to know how you feel because the music casts the glow on the lyrics, so I completely understand. I know if you're scared to pack yourself a toothbrush or if it's, you know what, it's time to go. It's all good. We'll be fine. Music does that. So, those lyrics, like I love the 80s, but it's all like big and dramatic and, it's, yeah. And it's like that kind of lyric writing where it feels like we're trying too hard. It's like over singing or over writing, So I tell songwriters, it's just a song. It's not heart surgery. Just say what you mean. And it's amazing how when we start to talk about, well, what I really wanted to say, what this song is about is those lines should somewhere be in the song, shouldn't they? If that's what you're trying to say. And yes, sometimes we need to touch lightly or say it in a way that is not, like reading a book report or filling out our taxes. But many times we are confused, I think, because about how to measure our lyric because we're so far away from what we really actually wanted to say. So then it becomes about making the lines short, for example, making them listenable. Can I grab the guitar and give you an example?
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
I don't know how well this is going to come through. It may not come through. Is it cutting out?
No, it's coming through.
Let's say, so this is a song I was working on just a few days ago. The lines are, there's a boat, powder blue, and the oars are solid wood. So I could sing that as one long line, like, there's a boat, powder blue, and the oars are solid wood. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Except if it doesn't excite me. So what I did was I'm going to separate these into very small phrases because, I don't know, I just thought it would be interesting to do. So there's a boat, powder blue, and the oars are solid wood. Okay, so I just had 4 little lines that describe a boat. You don't know why I'm telling you about the boat. And so if I keep telling you about the boat, and it's floating on the beach, floating by the dock in Philadelphia at noon, and I could do that, but I've chosen now to continue with detail, or specifics, like you were saying. At some point, if I continue to tell you, and the waves are lapping against the side, and people are walking by, and it's hard to stay specific so long because there's no point now to what I'm saying. And there's seaweed floating on the top of the water, and I want to say something like, "And isn't it a beautiful day?" But that would be a feeling and a thought now. But that's that impulse to tell you why I'm showing you what I'm showing you. So at some point, I think we all have that impulse to go into telling thoughts and feelings. Most of the time, we do it too quickly. So the opposite of that song would be, I've been feeling kind of blue, and I'm sad lately, and I feel like I can't go on because there's, I have trouble getting up. It's like, it's just, there's no substance now. So that was too light. The other was too heavy. So there's a middle ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's you can kind of feel it. Like, for one, when you broke that line up, it came into focus slower. It was kind of nice. It was,
yes.
I got pulled in slower.
Yeah.
But if you keep talking about all those details, I'm kind of like, all right. But if you just jump in with the feeling,
yeah,
I don't care yet either. Like,
yeah, nobody cares.
It's almost too much too soon, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like meeting somebody on the street and being like, "Oh my God, can I tell you about my divorce?"
Yeah,
and they're like, "What's your name? Who are you?"
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like no one cares. No one cares how you feel unless they know you, and they know you care about them. When we write songs, we're also we're trying to be good communicators. We're trying to respect our listener and say, "Look, I know you don't know me, and I know you don't know what I'm thinking about. And if I'm catching you, like you said, in a mood, and I haven't told a story yet, and I just start right in on my song, and you're wanting to party, and then I start doing this, you're going to be like, what are you getting me into here? What are we doing together?" It's a very intimate space to hold with your listener. And the worst thing we can do is to talk at our audience. And that's I think where a lot of our songs tend to, and I write all kinds of those too. I'm not immune. No one is. It's the neutral songs that we fear writing. The ones that, well, it's nice, but it doesn't connect. Yeah, and yet there's nothing wrong musically, lyrically, nothing at all. Yeah.
But I can feel when you start with the boat, Blue, I'm somewhere now. So I'm like with you.
Yeah.
And then if you want to tell me like I feel blue like the boat, then at least I'm like I'm there, I'm in the scene, and I can kind of go along with you.
Yeah.
Because here we are. Without the kind of like stage setting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels a little like too much too soon. Like you said, like I just met you on the street and you're like dumping your life history on me. Like,
right.
I'm not there.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere. We're just so.
Yeah.
I think part of what I'm getting to from what you're saying, and something I think about once in a while, is it's very tempting to try to kind of say it all in the beginning. Like what you were saying about like your husband's foot injury. If you just told me like it was tough and it was hard, and you've ran out of stuff to say by the end of the first verse.
Yes. So true, Brian. So true. And that's what slowing this down does. It means that you're saving yourself conversation for later. And you're
Hmm.
also, if something is wrong, which it is in many of our songs, um, in you have to keep people in that moment long enough that they can understand the significance of what is wrong. You can't just say, "Well, it was terrible," and then they're like, "Oh my God, I feel how terrible it is." They
Mm.
don't. You have to give time to have. Yeah.
When you mentioned the Lumineers lyric, I thought of a similar song, well, similar lyric kind of in a Radiohead song. I think it's on OK Computer. Yeah, it's where he says like "wake from your sleep," and that's got a much different vibe. It sounds like we're getting, and I think he says like today we escape, and it's an escape. Like we have to get out of here,
Yes.
and
Yes.
whereas those types of lines, depending on the music, could be like, "Hey, we're going on a trip. It's gonna be great."
Right. Right. Absolutely. The music completes the picture for you.
Hmm.
Yes. So it's not just, it's a different, lyrics are like texting, whereas music and lyrics is like having an in person conversation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Fun way to put it.
Just thought of that.
Nice.
What you said. But yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. But that's what makes songwriting such an amazing craft. Is I feel like we're creating, but we're also responding to what is being created.
Hmm.
I think at our best, recognizing this is how that sounds to me when it comes back, and now I can infer more about where the song might want to go because of how that sounded.
Hmm. I heard an interview with the author George Saunders, I believe is his name,
Yeah,
and I listened to his book after
amazing.
that because of it. But he was talking about writing is mostly reacting to what you just wrote,
I Yes.
and
So
and that stuck with me so much because sometimes you try to think it out too much. I'm going to make this song about this, and it's going to have this and that. And you just don't ever get too far. Well, I don't in those moments. I have to start putting something together and say, okay, like, all right, so we're gonna take this. We got these chords now, so let's add the words. Let's add to that line.
yeah,
It's so much. You kind of like almost always need something to build on,
yeah,
and
yeah,
of course, like the first step is to make something. But, to try to think it out in your head is kind of impossible, and I do that, I try to do it all the time, like, before I'm gonna pick up the guitar, well, what am I gonna do? Well, let's overthink it for an hour.
let's overthink it for a while. Yeah, yeah, and it's all wonderful, right? We all do that.
Mm,
It's I guess why we push record and then see if any moments come out later that upon um, another listen, just we have the impression of something stole us away from our overthinking for a second.
mm,
Yeah, beautiful thing.
mm. So you have some kind of cool opportunities for people, these songwriting retreats you're doing. Kind of
Yeah,
like it looks like a nationwide thing, but you're different parts of the world,
yeah,
California, Austin, the UK, Nashville.
yeah,
Um, I just want to hear a little bit about that. These sound like some pretty cool adventures. Just so you know, too, last year I was in a songwriting retreat in Monterey with about like 10 people, and
oh,
it was so valuable on so many levels. Just being with people that you don't really know yet,
yeah,
and becoming vulnerable with them, and this like being open and not only just to other ideas, but to criticisms and different styles and different approaches.
right.
It was one of the most valuable learning experiences as a musician and a songwriter I've had in a long time. So I'm
Yeah,
curious to hear about yours.
yeah, that in person element. we can get a lot done in a week. So it's a Monday
Mm.
through Friday retreats that we do, and we have all levels, all ages, many different styles represented at each one of the retreats. Usually on Monday, people start out feeling like they're keeping eyes on the door just in case it doesn't work out, And we're
I
out
know
in
the feeling.
Maine, right?
I think I was pretty committed to going, and especially because
Mm.
the guy that organized it helped set it around my schedule to some degree. So,
Yep.
um, but there was a part of me that was kind of like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, if I need to bail or something,
Yeah.
because it's a vulnerable
It's right
state.
there. Totally. Well, it is. And it, I think that's the thing is we all come on Monday feeling like we're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And it's as it should be. It's quite all right. And we get to know the room and we, go around and introduce ourselves and tell why we're here and what our intentions are. And it's absolutely incredible. We've done coming up on 30 retreats now over the
Mm.
last several years. And every single retreat goes the same way, where by Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, people are so jazzed, so connected, and just really ready to dive in collaboratively, um, look at ideas that they were developing before that they hadn't been able to finish and resuscitate them, um, come up with ideas on the spot, and just come back to that creative source that usually at the point that people are coming, to a retreat, it's feeling like, man, or, I've been touring a lot, or, I'm just not in it right now. I need to get it back. Or people who haven't written in a very, very, very long time, or music was a part of a past life, and you go and have
Mm.
a day job and family and whatever, life happens in between, and they come back and are really afraid of, will music find me again? Is that even possible? And by Wednesday, we're just a tight knit group, and already worried about goodbyes on Friday.
Mm.
But it's an amazing experience. And after the retreats, people often will continue to meet, and that's a major part of what we do. I think again, it's the consistency of writing that makes progress in our writing. And so, in 1 week, we can knock down some of the main um, reasons why we're not writing, not setting aside time to do it, or not quick enough to see results, or don't know what to do, when we have time to sit down. So there's a lot of tools that we can immediately go over that'll make some big changes. But in the end, it's up to the writers to dedicate their intention, like you said, to moving that boulder forward. And it's definitely easier to do with people that you trust because you've spent a week with them in the mountains somewhere, and you know them and trust them with listening to new material, having feedback for you. So we try to continue to do many things that will keep people connected as well.
Mm. That's so valuable. I mean, in my life as a musician, there's, you know, you can count the number of people you've really connected with and you've had that. And to foster that is such a good thing to do. And that kind of immersion where everyone's kind of on the same page here, where we're all trying to figure this thing out. It's a great energy to be around,
Yeah,
to just be around people that are searching for that too.
it is. And, to me, I think it's clear to me on our retreats when people become so connected, you've got 30 people with each interacting closely with three or four of those people continuously. That's so much more growth than I, as
Mm.
one person, could ever provide for any one writer. And people come. I mean, we're all adults, So there's loads of life experience and musical experience. Everything from legal help from some
Mm,
people with those backgrounds to people who teach theory or producers, in the groups. So I think that's really the name of the game. And I think to be a responsible and ethical educator, I feel that it's really important to put a lot of emphasis on that is what can you do together rather than what information you can gain from one person. It's not about that. I can ask the questions and I can, reflect my intuitions, but in the end it's about developing your own intuitions. And it's much
mm,
more powerful when done in a larger group.
mm. I would imagine you get quite a lot out of it yourself.
I
Learn
do.
all kinds of new things.
I do. I do. I always get
Good teachers
inspired.
tend to do that.
Yeah, I always get super inspired by the
Yeah.
retreats. Everybody there who comes, I see them working on their own personal struggle and having victories in ways they never imagined. There's people who will say on Monday, "Well, I don't sing," and on Thursday they're up there, clutching the microphone as if they've been, it's like, well, here goes. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
awesome to see that. And I think it would really be a disservice from me if I were to um, underestimate how the environment that I have been lucky enough to be able to provide, how pivotal that can be in some people's lives. And it's all because of them, what they've determined to make of it. You know, the,
Mhm.
the risks that they decide to take. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Sounds great. Um, I know on your website you've got a lot of dates already, some to be determined.
Yes,
So
we're very,
quite
very close to
quite busy.
releasing the 2025 dates. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. Let me ask you one more thing. I noticed behind you, sitting on one of your monitors, it looks
Uh
like,
huh.
you've got that grumpy old Muppet character,
I do.
the critic. I forget his name. He's got a partner that's not there.
Yes, he
Um,
is. He's on the other side.
oh, he's on the other one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. What are they doing there?
Oh,
You would think you want to keep them away from the creative
oh,
process.
that's so funny. You know what? I think there is a little bit of a embrace the cynicism, the
Mm,
skeptic, a little bit of that feeling of don't worry, it's like I said before, it's just a song. It's just a song
yeah,
because it can definitely feel like an identity at times, and it
right,
helps me
right.
to remember. You know what? There's other things. I don't wake up at 2 a.m. anymore to write ideas down. I mean, I might wake up, but then I'm like, I'm not getting up to write this down because part of the thinking is there's no scarcity here. I'll have
Mm,
ideas tomorrow when I have time to sit down and write, but I'm going to um, nurture and respect all parts of me when I can, and sometimes that means I'm going to sleep through it.
mm,
If I wrote down every idea I had for the purpose of using it, I would spend all my time moving ideas around instead of
right.
finishing things. So I guess I believe that everything is in there, floating about. And do I lose things? Probably.
Mm,
Was it the thing that's gonna, make or break the best song I ever wrote? I don't need to worry about that. You know,
yeah.
I just need to make time and space to connect with good ideas, things that I think are worth writing and make me happy. And that's my job. And if I've done that,
Mm,
then I'm doing what I need to do to be accessible. And that's okay.
mm. I think it's a good way to look at it. If you start thinking everything's precious, like, oh, I got an idea, and then
Yeah.
you start thinking like it is scarce and it's rare and
Yeah.
it's just a switch in the mind really to just say like, oh, we'll come up with more ideas. Like, it's fine. Instead of like, I can't believe I didn't remember that idea. I should have wrote it
Right.
down.
Yeah.
Such a it's a much worse place to be starting the creative process from.
It is. It is. And sometimes I obsess, over a song, and I'll be thinking about it for 3 days until I finish. But having the ability to turn that off too is important to me. I
Mm,
know some people it can't turn it off. It's just the music is always there. Um, but yeah, but life is real. I get distracted a lot. I get interrupted a lot. I think in this podcast I get interrupted. you know, and so rather than say, well, I can't write like this, I'm going to put the guitar in a box for 7 years until kids grow up, for example.
mm,
And I recognize that's not everybody's situation, but I had to find a way to continue to be creative or it was goodbye to music. And that's
mm,
not an option. So as a life force for me and a income, I had to find a way to make it work. And so part of this discussion really is I got to get real sometimes and say, yes, this is a creative la di da, purple sparkle cloud sometimes, but other times it's got to be like, I got to get this done. This demo has to get done, you know.
right.
Um, yeah. So again, it gets back to the tools, and we all come at this with different ideas of what we want it to be, the role we want music to serve in our life. And I think that needs to be integrated into the bigger picture. But the tools are at the heart of making um, tangible what is intangible. So I rely on them every day.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Well said. Yeah. I was think of it whenever I finish a song or anyone else finishes a song, I like to marvel at the amazement
Yeah.
of you've pulled something out of thin air. You've created something out of nothing.
It
And
is.
it is special
Yeah.
and it is worth celebrating. And, however you figure it out. But yeah, having the tools to get you there is a very important part of it. And I think it's awesome that you're sharing that. I've personally benefited from it very much. And I know many others have as well.
I'm so glad. Yeah.
Well, we'll send people to your website where they can, find if they want to get on the retreat. You've got a lot of other cool things. Was it the 30-minute songwriting?
Uh,
Right, the song's 30 minutes.
the 30-day songwriter.
30-day songwriter.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No.
Um, but there's just a wealth of really useful information there. So thank you for putting that out. And I encourage everyone that's listening to go check it out.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you. And thank you to everyone listening.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. It was fun to talk.
Thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. If you want to help support the show, the best thing you can do is tell a friend, someone you think that would enjoy the show. I'd also love it if you could leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support my work, you can go to brianfunk.com. I've got tons of Ableton Live packs, tutorials, samples. You can check out my book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, which gives you 365 short music making activities to help you get started, stay inspired, and finish more music. And there's also the Music Production Club, where you get my latest releases as soon as they're finished. It gives you access to a community of like-minded people who are making music and sharing ideas. You can share your music, find new collaborators, and participate in our live meetings where we set up some kind of musical challenge and then make music together and share our results at the end. That's the Music Production Club. It's a lot of fun, and you can find that and everything that I do at brianfunk.com. Thanks again for listening to the show, and have a great day.